All right. Well, if we get some other folks joining us, great. But this whole class is on handling objections. So handling the objections that come up in the real estate world. I know, Kim, you specifically have probably had tons of objections and different jobs that you've been part of, but we want to go over a couple of different one-liners, a couple of different scripts, and a couple of different ideas on how to overcome objections. But really, the main idea is just to teach the overarching idea of using the PAID method, which is an acronym. PAID stands for pause, acknowledge, isolate, and discover. And so using this acronym, you can quite literally handle any objection that might come up, whether real estate related or not. It is something that I found works really, really well. And it's really easy to do. It's not something that comes naturally. You do have to teach yourself to do it. And you have to consciously think about doing it. But it's a lot easier than any kind of scripts because you don't really have to remember too much. The number one thing you have to remember is to pause. And if you remember to pause, then the rest of it kind of comes out. So I want to explain what PAID means and why we do it and how it works in the real estate market. But first, talk about overcoming objections in general, which an objection is typically resistance to something that's happening. So you got to prepare for that resistance, right? So bringing something up yourself. If we know there's going to be an issue on something, bring it up yourself. Bring up the issue, tell them, hey, I know you're going to really love this house, but it's got a super steep driveway. The driveway is just crazy steep. I know it's going to be a problem for you. Then when you bring it up yourself, it's what I call preemptive strike on it, and that way they won't be too off guard when they go to the house and they see the steep driveway. But if you don't say anything about it, then sometimes it'll surprise them, which is worse than just having the issue itself. So in the real estate market, what conditions exist where we know there's going to be issues? Well, number one, we pretty much know that commission is going to be an issue. What we're asking our clients to pay can be a very typical issue that comes up. So we should expect it. If we do the doors presentation correctly, they usually won't, and it is true, they usually won't bring a commission objection. But we certainly should not be surprised if they do. It's a very common objection. So commissions would be one. The objection to the price that you're coming up with on a listing or for a buyer. Hey, I think that the home, according to the market and my research, it looks like the home should list for about $250,000, and they think, oh no, it should be $350,000. Well, hopefully not, but we should expect them on the seller side that they typically want to push the market and be a little bit higher. So if they bring up that kind of an objection, we shouldn't be surprised by it, right? So expect those kinds. They're going to happen. If they catch you off guard, then that's your fault, because we should not be. We should be ready for those objections when they come up. All right. So again, manage their expectations. One of the best ways to do that with a buyer is to do the full buyer consultation and go through everything. Manage the expectations for inspections. Make sure they've seen a prior inspection and they have some idea of what to expect when they get that summary back and it's 50 items long. That's what they should expect to have happen. So make sure we're doing that with everybody. Using the agent's feedback on a listing can help set the expectations correctly, and again, addressing it early is the biggest way to overcome a lot of deals falling apart and commission objections and all those sort of things. So bringing it up early in the buyer's situation where there's the right house for them, but there's one thing about it, maybe it has white cabinets and they really said they don't want white cabinets. We'll tell them about it before they get there. because otherwise they get there and then they say, oh no, we can't buy it because it's got white cabinets. Whereas if you told them ahead of time, they would go in looking at the house, and when they see those, they would say, okay, all right, well, we can deal with that. So address it early. Prepare the buyers. Make sure we're reviewing the purchase agreement with them. Make sure we're reviewing what due diligence fees are, due diligence dates are, having good expectations of closing date. The inspections may be the most important thing you go over ahead of time, because that will blow up so many deals, especially with new or first-time home buyers. If they've never been through that inspection process and they get that long list back, it freaks out everybody. Even people that are experienced, they get that long list back and they say, oh my gosh, look at all these problems. Well, it's normal. It's a normal list that we're going to see on homes. Bring up certain closing or settlement problems. Here's what could happen. Here's what we need to do to avoid this. One of those things that's popped into my mind is talking to buyers about when your lender asks you to get them a document, you need to get it to them immediately. You can't dilly-dally and say, I'll get it to them next week. That's what causes delays in closing. And fair to the buyers, why would they know that? How would they know that if you don't tell them? You know, you could say, well, they should assume that. Well, they just don't know. So making those kind of points to people can avoid a lot of heartache and issues as they come up. Okay. So again, we know that objections are going to come, and the objections could be to commissions. They could be to some good pricing that we're doing on the home. They could be to you as your marketing ability and your experience and what you can bring to them. It could be an objection to the house, again, the steep driveway or the wrong color cabinets or room size or every and any reason somebody doesn't want to do something. We would quantify that as an objection. So there's got to be a way to overcome these, or otherwise you're going to just lose more deals and be frustrated more often than is necessary. So the acronym again is PAID, PAID. It stands for pause, acknowledge, isolate, and discover. So the first part of that is probably the most important. And if you can just remember pause, the rest of it seems to come back to memory. So if we can just remember to pause, or like I like to just be blunt about it, if you just remember to shut up, then the rest of it seems to kind of come forward. All right. A lot of times real estate agents and people in general, but especially real estate agents, pride themselves on having all the answers. They know everything that someone could possibly ask them, and someone says something and they say blah, 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 and they know everything about everything. And that's really the wrong way to be as a real estate agent. You should let them come up with the answers to things, let the other party come up with answers, and be proud of your listening abilities as opposed to your talking abilities. I think if you looked at like a cartoon of what the public thinks of a real estate agent, it would largely be, maybe someone just talking all the time. And that's sad, because we should be the other way around. We should be really good listeners and negotiators. So you don't have to have all the answers. And it's kind of funny. A lot of new agents are really good at this because they don't know what to say anyway. So somebody asks them something and they pause because they don't know what to say. And sometimes experienced agents can be really poor at this because they might know what to say, but really by saying anything, they're being wrong. So the first thing we want to do is pause. So the benefits of doing this, avoid the defensive pushback responses. You don't want to play, if somebody says, well, I don't like the steep driveway, and you say, well, we're in Asheville, there's going to be steep driveways. Oh, you're a jerk. Okay. That's a true statement, but the way I said it and the quick response to it puts the other party on defensive. So we don't want to be like that. By just pausing, we kind of let it sink in, let it become voiced out. And so just by pausing, you can avoid being that defensive position. It can prevent turning that idle comment into a real objection. So somebody says, oh, driveway's a little steep. You say, oh, well, you can grade the lot here and you can move the driveway over here and you could do this and do that. And they're sitting there thinking, well, I'm just noting. I mean, it's not a problem. We got up here just fine. It's no problem. So sometimes by giving a quick response, you're turning something that was just a thinking out loud moment into a real objection for them. You can also allow the clients, the customers to think about what they just said, and they often answer their own question. The problem more often than not, or the objection more often than not, solves itself if you just pause. All right. And it creates some anxiety or some angst in the other party, which creates an opportunity for them to want to respond. So how do we pause? Well, and how long do we pause? Well, we want to take a significant amount of time. Whatever timeline you think is long enough, you probably need to add longer to that, because it needs to be uncomfortable. It needs to be uncomfortable for you, and it needs to be uncomfortable for them. All right. And by the advantage you have is that it's going to be uncomfortable. They don't. So one of the best ways to pause is just simply by taking a breath. Just take a breath, take a minute. You can count to yourself. David Knox, when he talks about pausing on things, he says, you can count it to yourself, but don't count out loud because they'll think you're stupid. So that's a David Knoxism. But you can count to yourself and count to 5 or 6. If you pause for an honest 5 seconds, that's a long time. It's a long time. But pause long enough for things to be uncomfortable and long enough for them to try to respond. Okay? So this is something that does not come supernatural to a lot of us. We have to learn to take that breath and pause. And so this is something that I think the paid method is something I think that's good to maybe put as a background on your cell phone screen or on your mirror at home or somewhere that you're consistently thinking about it until it becomes the natural way you respond to things. And it's so freeing. It really is. Because we always try to come up with these answers. And if we could just learn to just be quiet, so many of these things fix themselves. And like I said, this is not just real estate. This is everything in life. For instance, maybe, you're with some friends and they're trying to decide where to go to dinner. And they ask you to say, how about we go to this new Mexican place? And you just pause. And they say, oh, well, no, I know you don't like Mexican. Let's go to this hamburger joint or whatever. It works in every scenario. By just pausing, you'll be surprised how many things fix themselves. So a real estate example of that, let's say it's a commission objection. Commission objections, I think pause works maybe better than any objection because there's a definite you versus me mentality when you come to that commission objection. So a seller says, well, Aaron, we like everything you had to say. We talked to X company and they said they would list the property for 5%. We just want to ask you if you would list for 5. And people are very uncomfortable, And so oftentimes it fixes itself because maybe the other spouse or maybe the person who asked the question says, well, we just wanted to ask. I just told myself I have to ask. Like, oh, thanks for asking. And we can move on, It seems silly, but it does work. By just simply pausing, it will often solve that commission objection. All right. So that's pausing. I mean, it's very simple, nothing complicated about it, but just learning how to pause is something that you're going to have to think about and practice. All right. So the second part is acknowledge. Because if you pause for too long, they're going to think either you didn't hear them or you don't care or maybe you're not so bright. But none of those are good. So we have to acknowledge them at some point. So an acknowledgement could just be a simple head nod. It could be a okay, I hear you. Any of those things, like when you're talking with someone face to face and they keep talking, you can't just sit there and stare at them, right? We just kind of know this as human relations. You have to do something. You have to be like, okay, yeah, You're just letting them know I'm hearing you. I hear what you're saying. So that's essentially all we're doing here. Is just some sort of acknowledgement. It could be simple, yeah, like I said, just a simple head nod or something like that. Or it could be just a repeat of the question. So they say, Aaron, we really think you're great at, and we like your marketing plan, but X company said they would list our house for 5%. We just want to ask you, would you list for 5? And so then we would pause. Nobody's saying anything. So at some point I have to acknowledge it. And so I would just simply say 5%. Okay. And maybe I pause again. But I said 5%, or I could say, so the commission's the issue, and some sort of acknowledgement to that fact. So that one's really quite easy. But don't acknowledge too fast. When we're pausing, for me, it's 5 seconds. Usually after 5 seconds, I've got to do some kind of acknowledgement. Again, 5 seconds is a long time. So if you can pause for 5 seconds or so, that's a long time, and then do some kind of acknowledgement as part of that. And really, if you just do the head nod or something like that, you're still pausing. So people know you heard them, and you're kind of staring them down, and then it can still solve itself at that point. All right. So pause and then acknowledge. And then the third piece is isolation. All right, or isolate. Very, very important that we isolate the problem. All right, and one of the reasons that we're doing this is to be sure that we've uncovered all the problems. All right, so for instance, on a commission objection, if they say, well, X company would list it for 5, would you do that? And I pause and I acknowledge and I say, so commission's the issue, yes. Other than the commission, would you list with me? Now I'm isolating the problem. Because if they say, oh, well, no, X company, they were a much better marketing plan. We like them better. The guy's actually my brother. Well, what are we doing? I'm not going to answer their question on commission because they're clearly not going to list with me. Hopefully that's not what happens there. But we're trying to isolate the issue. If they say, yeah, absolutely, you have the best marketing plan. We'd love to list with you, but X company said they would do it for this. Would you? Then I can isolate that down, and I just made them admit that I was the better agent, and the only issue that we have here is commission. So now that's the only thing I have to get over. If I can get them over that, I've got the listing. But again, if maybe they say, well, we're unsure still, we're not positive about your marketing plan, we still have to interview 3 other companies, well, then we're not talking commission yet because we don't know if that's the only issue. All right. You don't want to leave other issues unsolved. So let's flip it back to maybe we're working with a buyer and they're looking at a house and you think it's a good house for them, but they really don't like the size of the second and third bedrooms. So you isolate that. Other than the second and third bedrooms, how do you feel about the property? And they might say, well, we don't like the driveway either. Other than the driveway and the small bedrooms, how do you feel about the property? Well, we really don't like the location. Okay, well, other than the location, the driveway, and the bedrooms, how do you feel about the property? Well, we hate the kitchen cabinets. Like, at some point, we're not buying the house, So we're trying to isolate it down and make sure that all of their issues are uncovered so that we can answer them. We also, if we don't isolate it, we end up playing tennis with them. And playing tennis with them would be, they hit the ball over the net and say, we really don't like the driveway. And say, oh, well, you can regrade it and you can fix the driveway and make it your own. Okay, great. Well, we hate the kitchen cabinets. Well, great. You can just, paint the kitchen cabinets or get new ones. It's not a big deal. Well, we really don't like the size of the bedrooms, or you can just get bunk beds. Don't worry about that. Like, at some point, it just doesn't make any sense. And you're playing this back and forth tennis. And when you do that, you come across as a very pushy salesperson. You don't come across as genuinely trying to help them. And by isolating it, you come across that way to people that you're actually trying to help them because you're focusing in on what the issue is. So we don't want to play tennis with them, and we want to make sure that we understand what's happening. It also can help put it in context with them. So in other words, if they say, well, we really don't like the driveway, you say, well, other than that, the driveway, how do you feel about the house? Oh, we love it. We absolutely love everything about it. We love the location, this and that. They're doing what you were trying to do, which was to convince them that I understand you don't love the driveway, but this is still the best house for you and in your best interest. But they're doing the talking. You're not. So by flipping that back around, it brings it full circle. So some of those sample questions would be, if we could resolve that issue, would you buy the house? It's isolating it. They say, well, no, we hate the location. Okay, well, then we're not talking about the driveway, or resolve that issue of my commission, would you list with me? Well, absolutely, you're the best agent for the job. Okay, well, let's talk about commission then, if it weren't for that, how do you feel? Other than that, how do you like this home? Other than that, what do you think? So some sort of isolation question like that, of just asking them, other than this one issue, how do you feel? Because again, that's trying to uncover if there's other issues there that we have to work on. All right, so isolation is so key, and really the difference between an average and an excellent realtor, somebody that can learn how to isolate that out. And it'll also save you a ton of time, because you'll have people calling you up saying, hey, we really like this property, but we're not sure if we like the location. Well, let's figure out the location first before we discover anything else we need to know about the property, So isolate it down. And then we get to the discover. Now, discover, you could say answer, but the answer just doesn't fit the acronym of PAID, so we call it discover. Pause, acknowledge, isolate, and discover. So the discover phase is the answer phase. Look for the concerns that are under the surface. So the surface concern may not be the only or the real concern. And one really good example of that is when people talk about pricing their home, and they say, well, we really want to get a higher price for their home, or I don't really want to pay you a lot of commission. Is that their real concern? The answer is no. Their concern is actually how much money will they net. That's their real concern. I have never met someone, well, I shouldn't say that, but it's 99% chance, there's always one jerk out there, but most people, the vast majority of people that I've met have no problem paying me a lot of commission. No problem. As long as I can prove that I can help them net more money. As long as I can help you net more money, they have no problem paying me whatever it's worth. To the same end, I have no problem paying my brain surgeon whatever he asks, because without that, I don't function. Oh, thanks, man. So, it just depends on where you are, but their real issue is about the net, not the commission. So when we answer that question about commission, that's where we go with it. We talk about the net. Let's talk about like room size. Maybe they say, well, we think the bedrooms are maybe too small. Okay, well, why are the bedrooms too small? Is it really that the bedrooms are too small? Probably not. The real underlying issue might be their furniture that they already own. They might own some big furniture. So maybe that's the real issue. Another one would be price of the home. Maybe you're working with a buyer and they just can't understand why they should pay $250,000 for this house when it's the starter house for them. So that's $250,000. How, I don't get it. Why should we pay that? Is price the real issue? No, it's not. It really isn't. The issue is their financial security. So how much is the payment really going to be? And especially in this time where we have really small interest rates, the price of the home should not be what we're really looking at for buyers, and especially in the lower price ranges. We should really be looking at what they can afford and what their monthly payments look like. Okay. A real big tip on discovering is to let them discover it for themselves. If they discover it, it's 100% truth. If you discover it, then they have to be convinced that you know what you're talking about, and then they have to buy into your opinion. It's a lot harder to do that. So if you're trying hard to convince them of the net that they get is really their issue and not the commission, you're going to have a hard time doing that. So you need to get them to come to their own conclusion that, yes, what we're really after here is the net, not paying you the commission. So how do we do that? Well, we got to ask them open-ended questions. And I think the reason that we usually don't go about it the right way is because we're all naturally a little bit lazy, and we just rather get right to the chase on it and say, you know what, by working with me, you're going to net more money, and here's why. That's a lot easier to say than to play Oprah with them and start asking open-ended questions and let them kind of come to their own conclusions on things. So ask those open-ended questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how. All of those kind of questions are just tell me more about that. Tell me what your real concerns are. Get them talking and bring them into your way of thinking. So you talk about commissions, for instance. You say, so my commission's the issue. So other than commission, would you list with me? Yeah, we think you're the best agent for the job. It's just that the commission is the main issue. And I would say, well, why do you feel that way? And let them talk. And they say, well, you know, it's just simply, we're looking at the simple math here. And I might say something like, if someone can't negotiate their own commission, how do you feel they're going to negotiate your house? And kind of flip the script on them, right? I didn't say anything. I just asked them a question. How are they going to negotiate your house if they can't negotiate their own commission? In their head, I've used that line with a lot of sellers, and they think to themselves, you know what, fine, give me the paperwork, let's sign. Because here I am negotiating with them, and they're like, oh, hell yeah. You know, if this guy can negotiate with me, then he's going to negotiate better for me on the back end. And it's 100% true. So asking those kind of questions and bringing them to the right answers, and it's a little bit like playing that game Password. We talked about that in a couple of different classes, where you got to give them clues and let them come to the answers on their own. Like, for instance, the small bedroom size. Maybe you say, well, so the small bedrooms are the biggest issue for you on the house. Yeah, they are. Okay. Why are they the biggest issue for you? Well, we've got two boys, and we're going to have to put them both in the same room. Okay, so tell me more about that. Why is that an issue? Well, they both have full-size beds and blah, blah, blah. And you say, okay, well, is there a way that we could fit both of these beds inside of that room? Well, I'm not so sure, you know. I guess we could somehow like stack the beds or something. Oh, bunk beds. There you go. Okay, yeah. And you just kind of follow along because you're thinking bunk beds the whole time, but you can't really say that, you know, especially as a parent. If somebody tells me what I should do with my kids, I'm not going to love that, you know. So if you don't tell me I should put my kids in bunk beds, but if I come up with that solution, well, then it's gold. It's gold, you know. So ask those open-ended questions and bring them to the answers that you want. Play the game Password with them. Again, this is not something that's just naturally going to happen. It is something you have to think about and think through in order to get them or in order for you to get good at this. Always be curious and not judgmental. It's really hard for me sometimes because you work with some buyer clients and they walk into a beautiful, beautiful house and they're just picking it apart. Every little thing, they're picking it apart. And it's really hard for me not to be judgmental in those kind of situations. It's their money, it's their house, they can do what they want, they can buy it or not. But I do find myself thinking judgmentally in those kind of situations, and we cannot act like that. So when we get to the discover phase, we can't say like, are you kidding me? These bedrooms are plenty big for every other human being. How are they not big enough for you? Obviously, that wouldn't go well if you say stuff like that. But don't be judgmental about it. Be curious. Well, why do you think those bedrooms are too small? Those kind of conversations and asking them why and not judging what you think. And frankly, what you think is irrelevant. So just asking them their opinions and being more curious about it. Okay. Question their position instead of defending yours. So maybe you could say something to the effect of like with the bedroom saying, well, with these bedrooms being 20 by 20, how much bigger would you expect them to be? Something like that, right? So you're just kind of questioning their position instead of saying, I think these bedrooms are plenty big. I'm saying the same thing, but I'm asking it in a way that's bringing up that question to them. So what are the deeper objectives of the parties involved? So an example would be a purchase agreement that contains 4 objections from the seller. You want to uncover all 4 of them, find out which one is the most important, and then try to change the key concern. So in other words, we have an offer. We don't like the price. We don't like the fact that they're asking for the refrigerator. We don't like the closing costs. We don't like the closing date. Well, if we go back to them asking to change all of those things, it's going to be a difficult negotiation. So bringing the 4 down to 1, we come back to the seller, to the buyer and say, look, the seller didn't love the fact that you asked for the refrigerator, but they're going to give it to you. They really didn't want to pay closing costs with where we are, but we talked about it and they understand that's important to you, so they're going to give that to you. They really would prefer to close a little sooner than what you're asking for, but you know what? They are absolutely going to make that happen for you because they know that's important to you as well. And the only other thing that they had an objection to was the price, and so we're going to give you all those other things, and we're just going to ask for this price. So now the buyer feels like they won. They won 3 out of 4. And in reality, you just come back to the seller and say, at what price would you do all those others? It makes it a lot easier to negotiate through something like that. And the same thing works for any other objection. Okay. So that's the acronym: pause, acknowledge, isolate, discover. The second piece to this is understanding what the different attitudes of resistance are. So really any kind of resistance is an objection, but there are different kinds of attitudes of that resistance. So number 1 is an objection. There's typically conflicting needs and something like that, and you can counterbalance that with benefits. So that's what we were talking about earlier. Like if the commission is the issue, we're going to counterbalance that by looking at the net price that we're going to bring to you is more than what you would make paying a less commission to someone else. That's our counter benefit. So that's typically what we're talking about as an objection. But there's a different attitude of resistance called doubt. So when it's doubt, that's their disbelief or mistrust, maybe in you, maybe in the house, whatever it is, but their doubt is coming from disbelief and mistrust. If that's the issue, then you need to prove with evidence. So for instance, price, if the pricing is the issue, it's going to be kind of hard to counterbalance the benefits of that. You could by saying, look, if you price here, we're more likely to sell faster, or whatever the case is. But if they don't believe what you're showing them, that's disbelief or mistrust in your abilities. So now you have to bring proof. And that's why when we talk about doing a full finance package for a seller, we want to bring all the evidence we can. Maybe we need all that evidence, maybe we don't. But if we have it all and they have some doubt or they have some mistrust there, we've got the evidence to show them. All right, and the third kind of resistance is indifference. This is the worst kind. Because if they have indifference and they're unmotivated, they don't see the need for any of it. So the only thing you can really do there is probe them or ask more questions of them. So it basically, and you will go to listing appointments. I have, where you're speaking with the seller and you're starting to wonder, why am I here? Because the seller is saying, well, we don't really care if we sell it. We don't really want to move. We don't care if we sell it this year or 5 years from now. But why am I here? And so, but you will ask that question, and there's clearly indifference here. They don't care if they sell it. But are they always telling you the truth with that? Probably not, because otherwise, seriously, why would you be there? So in that situation, you need to probe and question their issues. So you don't care if you ever sell it? No, I don't care if we ever sell it. Why not? Well, I guess if we don't sell it, we can't retire, but I don't really care if we ever sell the house. So by probing, you get more and more information, finding out what's happening. That's the only way you can really overcome that. Those are really hard to overcome on the indifference, but really the only way you can do that is by probing them to come up with some more information. One example, common example of indifference is a for sale by owner that just doesn't believe they need an agent. You will not be able to convince them through any form of evidence on doubt or on any counterbalancing of benefits why they should use an agent, because right now they're indifferent to that. So the only way you can get around them is just simply by asking them more questions and finding out what happened. You know, why do you feel this way? Maybe it's a personal story, maybe it's a story from a friend, something like that. But there's going to be a reason why they feel that way. Okay. So again, you've got your objections, your doubts, and your indifference. And then we get through all of it by just simply being quiet and pausing at some point, acknowledging it, isolate it. Don't just answer questions, isolate it. Other than that, how do you feel about the house? Other than that, how do you feel about working with me? Whatever the issues might be. It might be even like signing a buyer agency objection. Comes up often. You're sitting down with somebody, and it's a reasonable objection. I don't, we don't push that on people the first time we meet them, but we need to the second and third time we meet them. But we're sitting down with them, and they start pulling back, and they say, I'm not too comfortable signing yet. Pause. You're not too comfortable signing yet? Yeah, no, I just haven't read these documents yet, whatever. Okay, so we need to isolate it, though. Don't just let it go. I'm fine if we give them the documents and say, go ahead and read them over. Next time we get together, we'll sign them then. But I need to isolate that. So simply by saying, so other than just you haven't had a chance to read through these, is there any other objections you might have? And they say, no, I don't want to feel pressured here, and I just want a chance to read through this. Great, no problem. Let me give those to you, and we can kind of solve that by just giving them more time. But sometimes by asking that question, you'll find out like, well, actually, I know I said we weren't working with an agent, but I do remember signing something with someone a month ago. Like, what the heck, So by sometimes just asking them, isolating with them, it'll something more will come out of that. Okay. All right. So I know, Kim, we've just got you here on the class, but is there any questions you had pop up on this subject?
I don't think so. I'm used to asking open-ended questions because that's how you get history in veterinary medicine. So, always stop, wait, make it uncomfortable slightly, and then, deal with whatever their issues are is pretty
Sure.
common for me.
Good, great. Yeah, just something to be thinking about as as you're going through houses with people on listing appointments. And like we talked about at the beginning, just being prepared for the objection and not letting it take you off guard. Every time you go to a listing appointment, you should run over in your head, if they give you a commission objection, what are you going to say? How are you going to do it? And since we're just on that, I will tell you the best way to avoid a commission objection, to not get one, is when you go through, first of all, using doors and going through the full marketing package first before we talk about price and before we talk about signing. So showing the value up front, so then they have less objection to it because they can now see the value. But having the paperwork like right on the desk, right next to you, right? And then when that time comes to be signing, you're a freight train coming, right? So you slide the paperwork over and you just start filling it out and talking positively the whole time. Well, guys, this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm so excited to start working with you on this. So, Joe, I know you said you wanted to fix that deck before we got it listed. So when are you thinking you'll have that done by? When should we put like a marketing date on here? So what am I doing? I'm assuming we're signing this. If you just do that, people won't, you're not giving them a door. They have to create the door, and people don't like to do that. So is it salesy? I don't think so. I just think it's good business. Like, if you don't like it, you can stop me at any time. You can stop me. But people usually won't. And the same thing with the commission. So as we're going through that, the commission's written, pre-printed on the form as 6% commission. And we're just going through the document. So, hey, Kim, go ahead and sign this here. So here's your address. Here's the marketing date. Our commission is 6%. 3% of that goes to the buyer's agent. And we're going to market date starting on August 15th. I'm just moving. I'm not pausing and saying, just like for the same reasons. We don't want to give them the pause, right? We don't want to give them the opportunity to make things uncomfortable. So just say, yeah, we charge 6% here, 3% of that goes to the buyer's agent. Our marketing date is the 15th, and go ahead and start initialing here when you're ready, and just keep it rolling. And then that way they don't really have opportunities to bring it up. They still will. You know, we're not pulling anything over their eyes. We're being very upfront and open about it, but we're going to make them say something. I'm not going to ask them if that's okay. Never, ever do that.
Is there a lot of objection to 6% commission? I mean, it seems pretty standard to me.
There's a lot of objection to it. And a lot of it is just guys like me that will just have to ask. You know, a lot of people will just, and I totally respect it, because I've learned in negotiating, you'll be amazed what you get if you just ask. And so a lot of people just feel like they have to ask, and it goes away pretty quickly though, especially if if you show the value and they want to work with you, but they just feel like they have to ask. But there's still be some people that will push hard on it, and then those are the ones you really have to you know, pause with, acknowledge, isolate. Am I the best agent for you? Yes. Do you believe I can help net you the most money? Yes. So if I can't negotiate my own commission, how do you feel I would negotiate? How do you feel I would be as a negotiator for you on your price? And again, that really gets most people over that. And if it doesn't, then it may be something that, you know, we have to move on from. If they don't, and depending on who they are, I would get pretty blunt with them at some point and just say, if you don't see the value that I just showed, then I can't help you, because the value that I have will help you net more. And if you think this is just a cookie cutter, that agent's the same as me, then I haven't done my job to explain to you. I don't blame them. I don't say you're an idiot is what I'm thinking, but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I haven't done my job to better explain to you my true value. What can I do to better explain that to you? And like keep the conversation rolling to a point where either we're going to move away from each other or go ahead and sign. But anyway, back to your question. Yeah, well, you should expect it. Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I personally don't buy anything without asking for a discount.
Sure.
It never hurts to ask, but
yeah. Yeah, why not? I mean, yeah, absolutely. So I'm negotiating with a HVAC contractor right now, and it's kind of fun in a way, because they're just like, well, and I'm just quiet. I guess we could find, you know, $700-800 over here or $500 over here, and I haven't said anything. I just simply have said, what else can you do for me? You know, so like, you know, it will probably end up saving a couple $1,000 on that deal, you know, just by asking. So, all right, well, good. Anything else you want to cover in general, or?